All right, guys, when it comes to this next round of stimulus negotiations, looks like Bernie Sanders is on the campaign trail. He's not on the campaign trail for himself. He's actually on the campaign trail for the human infrastructure bill. That's the $3.5 trillion stimulus plan that they're trying to pass in the next few weeks so individuals will start receiving benefits from this plan. We're going to talk about what he's doing in details, and also when it comes to the impact, landlords are starting to have to sell their properties. That means that you might be looking at a brand new landlord soon, because it is not just the tenants who are now homeless. And if you stay to the end of the video, we'll give you some tips on how to save tax money when it comes to paying on your Social Security benefits. We're going to talk about all that here on Mostly Money. You're watching Mostly Money, where you're going to get all facts, no fake, no phony, and no fluffed up information when it comes to what's going on in politics today. And if you're interested in getting this information on a daily basis, well, you've made it to the right channel. All you need to do for yourself is subscribe. Click that bell notification so you get the latest and greatest information coming from Mostly Money. We're going to always be here for you and your loved ones. Let's get started. Yes, Bernie Sanders is on the campaign trail because he's trying to let America know how important this next human infrastructure bill is. Realize that the infrastructure bill is broken down into two parts: the human, or in other words, family or stimulus infrastructure plan, also the American Rescue Plan. Now, the American Rescue Plan focuses on the job market as well as the infrastructure as far as roads, highways, the ports. That's what the rescue plan is about. But the human infrastructure plan, they're putting a lot inside of that $3.5 trillion on our behalf.
What if we gave that additional unemployment benefits to employers to incentivize people to go to work?
Well, what if we just cut off the unemployment? I mean, hunger is a pretty powerful thing.
Well, from day one, Republicans opposed adding a supplement to normal unemployment.
People are being paid to stay home.
Because of the unemployment benefits, because of the child tax credits.
There's some concern that Democrats are going to try to push to make some of these things permanent.
I think this is bound to concern people.
At a time when tens of millions of people are working for starvation wages, their theory is if you have low unemployment benefits, you can starve people back to work. And obviously, I think that is. Minimum wage has not been raised by Congress since 2007. And it stands today at $7.25 an hour. I think one of the things that's happening is a lot of people right now are rethinking work, and they're sick and tired of working for wages that are totally inadequate. We've looked at all of these issues, and we said, what can we do? And I think what shocks my Republican colleagues is that we wrote a bill to address the crises facing working families and the middle class and low-income people, and not the wealthy and large corporations and their lobbyists.
Now, as you can see, that he described quite a bit what's going off into the plan, but realize you've got Nancy Pelosi with the House of Representatives, as well as other senators that have other plans they want to put off in there. Things that have to do with helping out seniors. Also, they want to make sure that at least until 2025, that child tax credit continues on. They want to make sure that maybe they put in some form of stimulus in the package, as well as making sure that the states is giving out more monies when it comes to assisting individuals that are in need. And when it comes to the states passing out the monies that are needed, they still have 90% of the money that's allocated to them to help you guys with rent relief, the programs that we've been talking about. 90% nationwide of that money has still yet to be distributed. We don't know why, but we're going to be doing some research on that to find out a little bit more for you guys. But that also means that gives you an opportunity to apply for stateside free rental money. So be ready to take advantage of that, because right now a lot of landlords are starting to sell their property. That means that you might be looking in the face of a brand new landlord coming soon.
About 11 million people are said to be behind on their rent. Going to have a lot of people scrambling for housing. WCPO 9 News anchor Kristen Swilley joins us live now with how that issue is colliding with this hot housing market we've had to create what some are calling a perfect storm. Good morning, Kristen.
Yeah, good morning, Julie. So here's the situation a lot of landlords say they're in, right? They have these tenants who they want to keep around, but they're dealing with all of this paperwork, a lot of this government red tape, and they're kind of looking around at this housing market, and they're really tempted to sell. With just how easy it is to find a buyer, a lot of them are choosing that second option.
It's a hard process to go through.
It came as a sigh of relief to renters, the prospect of millions of dollars set aside to help people keep their homes.
The rent relief is out there. Our area has been awarded $47 million to help housing and to help families in need for their rental payments. Unfortunately, that has been slow to get distributed.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, has only distributed approximately 20% of relief funds nationwide. Deborah Collins with the Real Estate Investors Association of Greater Cincinnati says that's having a trickle-down effect right here in the tri-state.
We have one member who has actually had over 20% of the units he managed be sold over the past year because the investors have decided this is not what they want to do anymore.
Collins says many who apply for assistance wait weeks to hear back and are sometimes denied with no explanation. And as many landlords decide to sell, Nick DiNardo with the Legal Aid Society of Southwest Ohio says there's always a buyer.
We're trying to help someone with rental assistance for the property to be sold in the middle of that process. And so then we have to just make sure we're communicating with the old owner and the new owner so that the tenant can maintain that housing.
Collins says that sometimes means investors buying up mom and pop properties and changing the dynamic of the affordable housing market for years to come.
We really feel like the community leaders, the politicians, we'd like to see their focus shift to how to distribute this money as quickly as possible.
And as I mentioned earlier, has not just left many tenants homeless. When it comes to the eviction moratorium, yes, it ended and it caused a lot of people to start losing their homes, which is sad. However, prior to the eviction moratorium, when it was still being upheld, a lot of landlords were losing their homes as well.
Tonight, we've learned a shocking number from the Treasury Department. Nearly 90% of the almost $50 billion allocated by Congress for rental assistance has not been distributed. Now, that money is meant for landlords whose tenants have stopped paying rent and cannot be evicted during. CBS's Mola Lenghi reports in depth on the consequences for landlords in America's eviction.
Brandy Lacasse has been waiting on rent for nearly a year.
I've cried many nights, like thinking, where's my money?
Lacasse owns 3 properties in upstate New York, but the single mother and Air Force veteran is functionally homeless after falling on some hard times. Lacasse says after notifying tenants they had to move out so she could move in, they simply stopped paying and stayed put. She and her daughter have been living out of her car and staying with friends. Despite more than $23,000 in unpaid rent, Lacasse can't force her tenants out because of state and federal moratoriums on evictions.
I don't understand how they can give my private property to somebody to live for free. I bought that property, I fixed it up with my blood, sweat, and tears.
The policies were meant to protect vulnerable renters, but some property owners say they have become collateral damage.
One thing that's very clear is we have no housing safety net.
Vincent Reyna, a housing policy expert and professor at the University of Pennsylvania, co-authored a new report showing that nearly 10% of landlords around the country collected less than half of their rent in 2020. Small landlords owning fewer than 6 units were most affected.
We're forcing low-income households and owners to essentially bear the cost of that in this current moment. And that's unfair to both parties.
I feel bad that I have not been able to pay her.
Carla MacArthur is Lacasse's tenant. With child care costs for her daughter and an autistic son, she says she can't pay rent.
We've gone from 2 incomes. I have had it twice. My kids all have had it once. My husband's had it once. We've been affected by.
MacArthur has been approved for rent relief in New York, but the state hasn't paid Lacasse yet. So far, New York has sent about 8% of its federal allotment of $2.6 billion relief dollars directly to landlords.
I'm not sure what she may do when the moratorium's lifted. That's what I'm afraid of being homeless.
2 families trying to avoid the same fate.
I invested in these properties never thinking I wouldn't have a place to live.
On opposite sides of a looming crisis.
I just want my house. That's it. I just want my house.
Mola Lenghi, CBS News, New York.
I know of the story of a landlord that because of the tenants that fell behind in their rent and the eviction moratorium, he lost so much money that he ended up having to move into the garage of one of his apartments that he owned. And he ended up paying $300 a month to his own tenants to live in his own garage. That's how tight things are out there for everybody. So hopefully this human infrastructure bill that Bernie Sanders has been advocating for, as well as the Senate and the House of Representatives, get passed soon. Another thing, the monies that's already dispersed to the states, hopefully they start taking the steps to get this money out to you all as soon as possible. There is no way in the world why 90% of the money is still in the hands of the states when this bill was passed back in March and April. Remember, the third stimulus bill had already been passed and that money had already been allocated. So why is it that the states are still sitting on this money? We don't know, but we'll find out for you on your behalf. But before that, let's talk about some benefits that are available to you seniors. There are ways in which you can start saving money right now by way of paying less taxes.
When it comes to Social Security, we have to understand a couple definitions. One of them is provisional income. So provisional income is all of your gross income plus any tax-free interest from municipal bonds, for example, added back in, and then 1/2 of your Social Security income. So provisional income is 1/2 of your Social Security, the rest of your income, and any tax-free income added back in. When we look at the chart for how Social Security is taxed, if you're a single filer and you have less than $25,000 of income, your Social Security is 100% tax-free. If your income falls between $25,000 to $34,000, provisional income that is, 50% of your Social Security is tax-free, 50% of it is subject to income taxes. And then if you're a single filer and you have more than $34,000 of provisional income, then 85% of your Social Security is subject to income taxes. Never more than 85% of your Social Security will be subject to income taxes. Now, if you're married and filing jointly, your provisional income, if it's less than $32,000, Social Security is tax-free. Between $32,000 and $44,000, 50% of it is taxable, 50% of it is tax-free. And then $44,000, more than, up to 85% of your Social Security income will be subject to income taxes. Now, these are the thresholds. They may not sound large at first, but when you understand concepts about retirement income planning, in retirement, that's the only time typically we ever get to control what goes onto our tax return. So overall, we need a plan. Do we want to save taxes today, or do we want to save taxes over the course of our retirement? And we need to embark upon that strategy or that path which is best suited for our overall retirement goals. But if we want to save more taxes today, because we might think we're going to be in a lower tax bracket in the future, or we don't have a large IRA balance, and therefore we don't have to worry about increasing required minimum distributions, we may want to save taxes today. So when we take income in retirement, we could, for example, harvest capital gains and losses to offset them. Take no IRA distributions and then only take from savings or possibly capital gains up to these certain limits. So where we take our income from, we can control what goes on the 1040, which is your tax return, and we can manage what our provisional income is to determine what our Social Security taxes are. A lot of times when clients come in to see me and we're doing this tax planning, we'll identify these opportunities and say, look, if we stop taking the income from here, if we change these investments around, if we add this investment in, now we have a retirement income plan. This is where you're going to take your income from and how much. We can manipulate the tax return to reduce the provisional income to fall into some of these brackets. And it might be 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, where we can get the Social Security income 100% tax-free, or maybe only 50% of it subject to income taxes. And then for some people, there's nothing we can do. It's just always going to be subject to income taxes at the 85% threshold. The point is, to get you more connected to your money, we have to understand what provisional income is, how Social Security is taxed, but more importantly, I'd say, how this decision from a planning standpoint ties into everything else that you're doing in your retirement plan. This is how Social Security is taxed. Understand that in retirement, you can control what goes on your tax return by the types of investments that you have, the accounts you place them in, and where you take your income from. One thing I will add here is mutual funds. A lot of times with mutual funds, if we're big mutual fund investors, they will distribute capital gains, and we don't necessarily know how much that's going to be. So sometimes that can mess up the calculation a little bit. But for the purposes of this video, I'm glad now you understand how Social Security is taxed, how you can have a control over what income tax rate you pay on your Social Security.
So at the end of the day, there's always a way to save monies. And therefore, you individuals who are seniors, yes, and you're on Social Security, you can still have tax breaks yourself. So realize that and be ready to take advantage of them. I'm going to continue to do research and homework in regards to getting you more information on how you can save on your tax benefit as a senior on Social Security. Also, we want to give our heartfelt prayers for those that are in the Gulf Coast, those that are in parts of Florida, parts of Louisiana, Alabama, Texas, as well as Mississippi. You individuals are going through dire straits right now, and we hope that it all comes to an end real soon. We're going to be talking about how a person in your situation can apply for FEMA assistance, because a lot of you are going to be having that question come up, going to be having that question come up, going to be having that